Hello, my name is Katie McManus, and for this assignment for my ISM paper, I wanted to look at the issue of ableism and autism, particularly in a kindergarten classroom. I've been a kindergarten teacher for 9 years, and this year marks the first year where I have had a student with diagnosed autism. And with the prevalence of autism growing, the inclusion of these students into the general education classroom is becoming more common. As the school year has progressed, I've noticed that the things that I thought were going to be issues with this student are not actually the issues that I have with him. He's very bright. His behavior is manageable. The issue that I'm becoming aware of is in line with ableism, and I've noticed that my expectations of him are lower than that of his peers. I noticed that his peers, who are all very accommodating to him and very kind to him, they still treat him like he's incapable of things and much younger than they are. There's never any ill will in the way that they treat him, but it's still becoming an issue. So for those reasons, I've asked myself this question: how can I create an inclusive classroom for students with autism where teacher and peer expectations are fair and equitable? To address the question of why autism's diagnosis is on the rise. These students more and more are being included in the general education classroom. This inclusion has the potential to create a climate of ableism. And looking at what autism can be described as repetitive use of objects, inability to communicate clearly, resistance to changes in routine, and difficulty with social interactions. Common characteristics of students with autism include lack of eye contact, social aloofness, difficulty with expressing needs verbally, repetition of words or phrases, and responding differently to sensory input. When I first learned what ableism was, it never really occurred to me that this could happen with young children. Unfortunately, I'm seeing this happening with my students when they interact with their autistic classmate. Ableism can be described as the belief that it is better or superior not to have a disability than to have one, and that it is better to do things in the way that non-disabled people do. I don't think that my students intentionally have this attitude toward their autistic classmate, but the way they treat him leads me to believe that if it is not dealt with, they will start to believe that they are better than him because they do not have a disability. In an article that I read for this research by Priya Lavani and Jessica Bacon, titled "We Are All Special: Rethinking We Are All Special, Anti-Ableism Curricula in Early Childhood Classrooms," they had a really good quote that stated, "The fact that children notice differences or that they classify based on it is not in itself a problem. Rather, the problem is that through the responses they receive from adults around them, or through the lack of conversation about their observations, children can learn some kinds of differences are less desirable and certain groups less valued." I know that unless I talk to my students about autism with a positive perspective and teach them the best way to interact with him, I might inadvertently portray that he is not capable or that he doesn't have the same value as other students. And this is definitely not my intentions. The students in my classroom are very kind to my autistic student, but they don't understand why he is different, and they don't independently choose to play with him. I have not addressed autism specifically in our classroom, although we talk about how everybody is different, and we talk about being different and why being different is okay. I have not specifically addressed this disability, and in the studies that I've done for this paper, I've seen that children at the kindergarten level are more accepting of differences than their elementary school counterparts. And this really has me determined to educate my kindergarten students so that their perceptions of students with disabilities will be more positive moving forward. They do act like he is little. When they talk about him at home, parents think that we have a very little child in our classroom, although he is bigger than most of my students. Their perception of him is that he is not able to do what they can do. They act surprised when they see him being successful at something. In their minds, they don't think that he should be able to because he doesn't talk very much. And usually they talk to him in baby talk. They think that he can't do what other kids can do. They want to hold his hand and lead and guide him everywhere that they go. And this really is just because of their lack of information. And that is what leads me to know that I need to provide a more inclusive classroom for my students. In my experiences with my autistic student this year, I have found myself responding to him with lower expectations than my other students. I want to keep the peace in my classroom, so I allow him to do what he wants rather than hold him to the same standards as my other students. I believe that he is able to accomplish all that the other students can do and more so, but it is difficult to manage all the other students in my classroom and make sure that my autistic students' needs are being met in terms of learning. I know that that is one of the most important things is for teachers to become more educated about autism spectrum disorder. This disorder covers such a wide range of symptoms, and having such a large spectrum makes the inclusion of these students that much more difficult. I don't want to do anything that's going to keep my student from reaching his full potential. And I know that the way that my other students respond to him is directly related to how I respond to him. And if I give negative first impressions to my students, then that's going to affect the way they look at him as well. To create an inclusive classroom for my student with autism where the teacher and peer expectations are fair and equitable, I need to make sure that I am fostering community within my classroom by making each member feel valued, emphasizing the importance of relationships among the students, making sure that members of the classroom are accountable and respect each other, making sure the physical environment supports all the children's health and safety, and ensure that my students feel emotionally safe.